John lived in the city. His wife had died while giving birth. Their baby didn't survive either. Now, he had no reason to live happily. If his baby had survived, he could have lived for the baby. John was broken inside. One day, he saw a small puppy lying on the street. Its leg was bleeding. John's heart ached for it. He picked it up and took it home. He cleaned its wound and gave it warm milk. Days passed. The little pup got better but didn't leave. It followed him everywhere. John named it Jojo. Years went by. Jojo grew into a big dog. But to John, he was still that little puppy. One Sunday morning, John woke up and saw Jojo still asleep. He gently shook his leg.
Wake up, Jojo. We are getting late for jogging,
he said. Jojo yawned, stretched, and stood up. Soon, they reached the park and started jogging. John was running fast, far ahead of Jojo. After a while, Jojo sat down, out of breath. John laughed.
You look like a little boy today. Dogs are supposed to be fast.
Then, they headed to home. After returning from the park, John went to the kitchen. He warmed some milk and poured it into a bowl. Then, he placed biscuits in another and set them down.
Jojo, start your breakfast,
he said. He made tea, boiled eggs, and set the table. As he sat down, he noticed Jojo still sitting quietly. John smiled.
What happened, Jojo?
Jojo placed his head in John's lap. John laughed.
You won't eat without me, right?
He picked up a slice of bread, spread jam, and took a bite.
Look, I'm eating. Now you eat too.
Jojo wagged his tail and started eating. John smiled, shaking his head. The next morning, after breakfast, John took Jojo to the station. He bought his ticket and waited. When the train arrived, he patted Jojo.
Go home now. I will be back in the evening.
Jojo rubbed his head against John and turned to leave. John stepped onto the train. Jojo looked back. John smiled and waved.
Goodbye, Jojo.
The train started moving. Jojo watched for a moment, then headed home. He reached the house and sat on the lawn. As the sun started to set, Jojo stood up and ran to the station. There, he waited eagerly for John. After some moments, the train arrived. Jojo's ears perked up. He ran forward. John stepped out of the train. Jojo jumped on him, placing his paws on John's chest. John hugged him tightly.
Let's go home, my dear.
Then he headed home. Jojo walked beside him, wagging his tail happily. Soon they reached the house. After dinner, John sat in the lounge. He thought,
I should make tea. Or maybe coffee.
Just then, the doorbell rang. He got up quickly and opened it. Mike stood there. John laughed.
Oh. That's good. Come in. Now you tell me, tea or coffee?
Mike smiled.
What do you want?
I couldn't decide. You choose.
Mike laughed.
Coffee.
All right. Come to the kitchen.
John said. Mike sat at the table, while John was beating the coffee. Jojo came and sat by his legs. Mike smiled.
Jojo loves you. As if you were his father.
John laughed.
Maybe. Because I raised him.
John asked.
Why didn't you bring Sarah and Archie?
They are busy with exams.
Mike replied. John smiled.
Tell them if they get positions. I will give them any gift they want.
Mike nodded. Soon, the coffee was ready. John handed Mike a mug and sat with his own. They sipped their coffee. Mike smiled.
You make good coffee.
John smiled.
Years of practice.
Mike started discussing his office project. One evening, Mike was making a grocery list with Catherine. Sarah and Archie were watching cartoons. The phone rang. Mike answered.
I'm calling from John's office. Are you Mike?
Mike's heart pounded.
Yes.
I'm sorry. John is no more.
Mike froze. Tears rolled down his cheeks. Catherine stared in shock. Sarah and Archie fell silent. Mike said.
Oh God!
He ended the call and turned to Catherine.
John is gone! He was more than a friend. He was my brother.
Catherine wiped her tears. Sarah and Archie hugged Mike. Suddenly, Mike gasped.
Jojo!
He rushed to John's house. Jojo ran to him. Mike hugged him tight. As the sun set, Jojo tried to leave. Mike held him back.
Don't go! It's useless!
His voice broke.
I'm bringing John home.
Crying, he took Jojo with him. After John's funeral, Mike adopted Jojo. But Jojo was heartbroken. He barely ate. Sarah placed a bowl of milk in front of him.
Come on, Jojo.
Archie held out a cookie.
Please eat.
Jojo turned his head away. Mike sighed. One rainy night, Mike stepped out for some urgent work. The main door was slightly open. Jojo saw it and slipped outside. When Mike returned, he locked the door. The next morning, Jojo was missing. Mike's heart pounded.
Oh no! He must have gone to the station.
He ran there as fast as he could. Jojo lay still on the platform. Mike's breath caught. He stepped forward and shook him.
Jojo! Wake up!
But Jojo was gone. Tears streamed down Mike's face. He knelt beside him.
John! He is with you now.